with the age that we're in with AI and things going more and more online and not being able to know what's real or not, we're
Yeah.
seeing people crave more in person support.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Unison Community Podcast. I am your host, Gabriella Newell, and today we have a holistic therapies expert with us who will discuss different techniques. So, Aoife Murphy, who we have here today, is a holistic therapist and coach who empowers people to gain clarity and create lasting change through coaching and calming energy healing therapies. She specializes in Reiki, sound healing, and ceremonial cacao facilitation, offering a grounded and intuitive approach to personal growth and well-being. With over 15 years experience working in high-pressure corporate environments, Aoife understands firsthand the challenges of demanding careers, personal life, and significant life transitions. Through her own journey, she learned how to create balance, clarity, and alignment by engaging in and training across a wide range of healing modalities and techniques. So recently, Aoife founded Empower Wellness and Coaching based in Dublin, Ireland, and she now works with clients both online and from her peaceful home studio, guiding people back to the clarity, confidence, and inner power within so that they can live more content, connected, and aligned lives. So welcome, Aoife.
Thank you, Gabby, for the wonderful invitation to be here and the intro.
Great. Well, just to get started, can you talk a little bit more about holistic therapy and what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. The word holistic therapies, or the words, kind of get thrown around a little bit, and they're quite broad and it is quite hard to define. But really, the best way that I like to describe it is it's an approach to help somebody from all different angles, whether it's their mind, their body, or more of the kind of spiritual side of things. And rather than just looking at one symptom, right? So we're kind of looking at the individual as a whole. So you might go into somewhere with a pain in your stomach, and you might be treated for that, whereas a holistic therapist will ask you more things around what's going on in your life, or if you're unable to sleep, right? We're not just going to say, okay, well, here's this tablet to sleep. We're going to ask you, okay, well, what's going on in your life? Are you busy? What's your day to day like? And so really, and my background is in science. We learn in university in science that we are a living organism and we're all
Mhm.
interconnected, right? Our body, if our brain is off kilter, our body will also be off kilter. And so really in this way, a holistic therapist will focus on you as a person rather than,
Mhm.
whatever the symptom is that you have. Now, I mentioned it is an umbrella term, so it is very broad.
Mhm.
It doesn't just include things like energy healing, which is what I, have a preference for, whether that's Reiki, sound healing. It also includes things like breath work,
Mhm.
mindfulness, relaxation, but it can also be some of the more traditional modalities like acupuncture and reflexology.
Mhm.
So it's a very big, broad umbrella term for these therapies that look at you as a kind of whole, and
Mhm.
don't just separate your mind and your body.
Definitely. And I'm so excited to get into this topic because we have had prior episodes about endometriosis and chronic pain, and all of them have alluded to the fact that their providers have mentioned just the importance of, being mentally healthy, alleviating stress. And then also just from personal experience, there is such a mind body connection, and we take that for granted. Super excited to delve into this topic more, and just wanted to, ask you in the first place so people know your background is in corporate. We used to work together. You worked in tech. So, how did you kind of get into this while having such a busy kind of job career, kind of more of a traditional office job?
Yeah, it's a good question because I get it quite often. And I suppose if I reflect in my early 30s or my early 20s, I came out of a pretty abusive relationship with somebody. And so I'd spent a good 7 years in that, in my late teens and in my early 20s. And so I, was really in a place of a lot of change, a lot of upheaval. I'd, managed to leave that relationship. But I also just came out of university, and
Mm.
it was the time of the economic downturn. And so I really had to find something to kind of help me feel centered. So really, I think what I was looking for was just this kind of connection to myself. I felt like I was slightly lost, and it all started with a Groupon deal. I'm not sure if they've been taken over with,
Oh my
various
God.
companies. I don't know what they're called now, but it was for hot yoga at the time. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, this sounds pretty fun, and it's around the corner. And that turned into a daily practice for about 3 or 4 months. So I knew I was onto something. And the teachers that I met there, they were just, you can be so lucky over your lifetime to meet some
Mhm.
really good, genuine people. And funnily enough, those two teachers, they were husband and wife, and they ended up moving into the same, row of houses that my family home is in. So like a few years ago, we all reconnected. So really that led to curiosity for me to find more yoga studios, find more workshops, find more retreats. That led to international retreats that I go to. So I kind of along the way just found little nuggets from certain teachers or little classes that I liked. And I've kind of tried it all, if I'm
Mhm.
honest. And I do recommend that for people. I do not believe in one size fits all. And I do believe at different parts of your life, you need different things. So
Mhm.
in 2016, I found Reiki. And there's all different levels of training in Reiki. So I completed my level one, and then I moved to London for work for 4 years. So there in London, there's so much choice of yoga and various holistic practices, that I actually discovered sound baths. I was like, wow, what are these? And I know we'll get into that, but it
Mhm.
just blew my mind because the very first sound bath that I had, or one that I can really remember, the lady was incredible, but I felt like I was levitating in the room.
Mm.
And so I was like, wow, what are all of these? And cacao definitely made an appearance at some stage, but I can't really remember. So really, this all kind of snowballed really into me trying so many different modalities, techniques, teachers to find this connection to myself, to find the calm, to help me de-stress, right? You mentioned I was in the corporate world. And I was in very stressful environments, very stressful roles, 12, 16-hour days. I've weekend work. I've done it all. And so I needed
Mhm.
to counterbalance this because I just didn't feel good really.
Mhm.
And I have regular appointments now. I still have a osteopath that I see, Thai masseuse, reflexology is a big passion of mine at the moment, and acupuncture.
Mm.
So look, I moved back to Dublin in 2020, again into corporate world, into tech as you mentioned, and in 2021 I got serious about really upskilling in some of these areas that I now facilitate. Then earlier or later in the summer, I finally got the opportunity to make a real go at it. And where I've landed is offering the types of techniques and modalities that have worked for me, and that
Mhm.
I find the most accessible and that I use, myself. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I got into it.
I think a lot of us can relate to being in intense corporate environments. And the hardest part is kind of recognizing what you need or identifying that these are options. And then also, it does take effort to kind of get to this place. I remember I had a teacher in high school who, after our vocabulary quizzes, would make us meditate. And at first I was like, oh, this is horrible. Like we just have to sit here in silence. But then once I got into it and realized what it's like, it takes work. I mean, you have to kind of get to a place where you can do this. So, I mean, these things do take effort, but it's, worth it to see kind of how your life improves. And I think a lot of people like to talk about, I want to meditate, I want to be involved in sound baths and all these things. But to kind of get to that point, it does take effort. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. So that's why I think the coaching you're providing is helpful, just adding that extra support. So, with that, you specifically focus on offering three things right now, and that's Reiki, sound healing, and then the cacao ceremonies. So, for those of us who are a little bit less familiar with those, could you just explain in detail what each of those is, what that entails?
Mhm. Absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback a little bit what you said earlier, you talked about mental fitness,
Hmm.
or you used some forms of the words, and it does take work. It's like when we go to the gym, we
Hmm.
can't expect to be, super strong and, fit without lifting some weights. And
Hmm.
so this sort of work, whatever it is that you do, if it's meditation, if it's walking, if it's breathing mindfully, it is effort, but
Hmm.
it's a daily effort that you require to use, right? So it's, I think quite often we fall into the trap of going back into our old habits and our old life and expecting things to get better. But,
Right.
as stress, continues to, because you'll always be stressed to a certain extent. We need to alleviate that stress in some way. So yeah, you very nicely geared me up there, Gabby, for the different modalities that I facilitate as well as use myself. Reiki,
Mhm.
really, how I like to describe it is it's a really gentle, hands-on healing technique. It originated in Japan in the early 1900s. I won't go into all of the backgrounds, but you guys can do your googling. But there's all different lineages. Like with any sort of yoga, there's all different types of yoga. It's similar
Sure.
with Reiki. So I'm of the Terra Maya lineage, and there's certain, I suppose, approaches to how we do that. So really, how it works is people might be familiar with the word chakra, and you might have heard it in yoga classes. And
Mhm.
basically, that is a Sanskrit word for the main energy centers in your body, right? So there's ones in the top of your head, and they run all the way down through your root. What's believed is that a lot of your emotions, depending on which ones, will gravitate towards those particular energy centers. So we're all very familiar with being super stressed. Some of us might get headaches. We might get brain fog. That crown chakra is probably in needing of some unblocking, right? I think that's the
Mhm.
easiest thing for people to kind of picture. So what we would do as a Reiki practitioner is we do not heal people. So anyone that does tell you we're healing you, my recommendation is to maybe find someone else. We
Mhm.
just facilitate. We are
Right.
facilitating a safe space, a trusted space, and we facilitate the natural energy that's in the world to help you heal yourself. So the best way I can describe this to you is if you've ever walked into a beautiful park in nature or a beautiful wood, and you're just literally walking in the trees, and you maybe do that for a few minutes and you kind of find yourself feeling really calm. You're like, oh wow,
Mhm.
like I feel really calm. Or if you come across like a wild animal that's like, a wild bird that's really cute, you get this sense of calm. And what that is just the general universal energy that's around you, right? So what we're
Mhm.
doing in Reiki is tapping into
Okay.
that bigger collective, and how we essentially help you in the particular session is you're lying down. Some people could be sitting, but you're typically lying down on a massage table or something that's really comfortable. You're fully clothed, your shoes are off, and you're really cozy, and you're getting ready to just relax as if you were having a little nap.
Mm.
I'm a hands-on Reiki practitioner. Some people do not prefer hands-on, so what that would mean is that we would use our hands in different places of where the chakras are, obviously avoiding sensitive areas. And we would channel beams of energy to help unblock that. And there's various other techniques that are used. So really, it's a process of moving up and down the body, using hands on, focusing the intention on what you're trying to unblock. We would have, as I mentioned to you earlier, we'd want to have a chat around what's going on in your life. Are you feeling not as confident? So there'd be certain areas that we would focus on to do that. You should immediately feel more relaxed. Obviously, given most people that come to Reiki, they're very busy minds. They probably rush to get to the appointment. It could take about 15 or 20 minutes for you to fully, really sink in. They're typically an hour long Reiki sessions. They'll have some lovely music, dark backgrounds, and so on. And it's just a really gentle, easy way for someone to relax while someone is providing hands on energy healing to help them deal whatever issue that they're dealing with.
So is I liked what you said about we are not healing you. You can only heal yourself. And like you mentioned, I mean, you use the word coach to describe yourself. Like
Mhm.
in sports, the coach can't win the game for you, but they can provide the strategy or the environment to help you win the game. And I think it's like the same concept. You're providing the resources and kind of helping to garner that energy to help people to get to this place that they want to be at mentally. The Reiki sessions that you are describing, if I were to show up, what could I expect from a session? And then perhaps what does this look like if I were to get to a place where I could do this by myself?
But you absolutely can, yeah. So
Okay.
let's take if you showed up to me today, Gabby, and actually I
Mm-hmm.
had a client yesterday. So we'd show up, you'd come in, we'd have a little chat for 5 or 10 minutes, just, how's everything going? What's going on in your life? Because generally when people are coming for treatments like this, they're coming for a reason, whether they're unable to sleep or they're quite stressed or they're dealing with something. So it's just helpful to understand where people are at. So that
Mm-hmm.
would probably go on for, depending on how much you know the client, between 5 and 10 minutes. Then my preference is to have people on a big, comfortable bed that are covered in blankets. There's obviously a lovely pillow for you to rest, and I'll cover you in various blankets. And so then there'll be some nice music playing, soft music in the background. And I would start the Reiki treatment. So we will always start from the crown. There's different movements that I have to do with my hands to kind of start the session. But again, it's all
Mm-hmm.
more for me than for you. And I'll work my way down from the top of your head to your feet. So there's
Mm-hmm.
different points at which a practitioner will stop at. And then generally, as we go through that, I like to talk people through what I'm doing, especially if they're quite new to it. So now, we're working on the crown chakra. You mentioned earlier about stress. Let's focus your energy on I am stress free, or I am clear minded. I am tapping into my, inner clarity. I am empowered to feel more calm. These sort of positive affirmations. So when you have people in a relaxed state, you're so close to people's subconscious, right? Their subconscious
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, because that's what kind of forms our habits and our thinking patterns. And so what we want to be saying is really reinforced positive intentions to people when they're in this relaxed state. So generally I'll do that for the first round of going through the body of whatever it is that they're looking for. It's really important to have at least a half an hour, if not 40 minutes of silence, where it's really just the energy work doing the work, because talk can get quite distracting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the client isn't able to fully relax. So you've got the soft music where they're clearing the energies hands on, or we're doing some energy movements in, because your energy body comes out about a foot from your body. So there's lots of work that we can do in there. So afterwards, you're gently kind of brought back in. It takes a few minutes to you to come back, right? Because you might have fallen asleep. You might be kind of half asleep, but you should feel really relaxed and a sense of calm, and just even 1% more clarity about whatever it is that you've come in for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very normal to feel a little bit out of sorts, a little bit spaced, if you know what I mean by that. So I
Mm-hmm.
generally make sure the person is okay. Afterwards, give them some water, be careful driving, not to kind of jump straight out. It's kind of
Right.
like if people have been in a yoga class, if you've ever seen the people that leave before Savasana at the end.
Oh yeah.
So, the Savasana is really important. And that's where the holistic piece comes into yoga. Really, you're just doing the whole class for that 2 minutes at the end, because that's where you get a lot of the healing. Um,
In terms of the sound healing, what does that look like? Do you do that in a one-on-one setting, or I've been to sound baths that are in a group setting?
mhm.
And also, if you could kind of explain what that is in general as well.
Sound healing is as old as time, is what I'd say. And I'm sure there's like people out there that are best placed to give you better definitions. But for me, it's really anything whether it's an instrument, whether it's a tone, whether it's a voice, whether it's song, bird song, whether it's an instrument that creates a vibration, or, if you want to get very physical about it, like a frequency. And we all have different frequencies and sounds that we like. I personally love the sound of birds singing. It just really helps to decrease my heart rate. And so sound healing is the use of these. And you mentioned sound baths, and I run a lot of them, where I personally use crystal sound bowls. So they're crystal quartz sound bowls. I think a lot of people love to use gongs. So people might be familiar with the little brass bowls that are different sizes, and they're also beautiful as well. And there's lots of percussion instruments that people can use, flutes. Some people love to use harps. So it's really using your flair of instruments again to help people relax. So in a sound bath, what would generally happen is that, again, you would, as if you were coming to a yoga studio, come in, dressed in layers because you're going to be lying down. Typically, you will, and you've probably noticed this, Gabby, when you're lying down for some time, you can get quite cold, even though you've come in and you're quite warm. So you're generally wrapped in layers, hopefully nice blankets and pillows. And typically, the practitioner would do a grounding meditation to start, just to bring everyone into the room, because, again, we've probably all rushed to get there. And then they'll hopefully get into the sound bath itself, where they'll use a mix of these bowls. But some people that are gifted with song will sing beautiful songs as well, and use various different instruments throughout the practice. It's a very intuitive practice, quite similar to Reiki, because even though, and I personally don't touch people in sound baths, I know practitioners that would actually place the instrument on people's bodies. I personally don't like to do that. I like to give people their space. I'm here to facilitate a safe space for you to relax. Now, really, what we want and what the ideal is, and there's lots of science behind this, and I'm very happy to share any of the research papers afterwards, that you're trying to get your body and your mind into the state between sleep and consciousness.
Okay.
And so for some science people of your listeners, that is the theta and delta state of your brain. So you can get into this through different ways, whether it's breathing, mindfulness. Some people do it through meditation, but I find the sound baths really helpful for this, because
Mm,
sound is a natural sound from bowls, from instruments, from, your voice are really natural. And it
right.
just allows yourself to get to this place. You'll drop into this relaxation state through these instruments, and then hopefully come back out again very slowly. You're probably half asleep, and a lot of people kind of get confused when they're new to it, because they're kind of like, well, I wasn't asleep, but I was asleep. And it's a new sensation for them. But really, the 20 minutes of time in that state is like 4 hours of sleep. And
Oh,
that's why
wow.
people feel so restored. And I can always tell by people's level of relaxation and restoredness by the white of their eyes.
Oh,
Because,
interesting.
yeah, well, that's my gauge of kind of,
Okay.
has this worked for people.
Hmm.
um and you could just see, and that's why, as a practitioner, you have to be so emotionally aware in the room, because there could be people that are dealing with some stuff, so you'll have to adjust the music or the instruments that you use. Like, I have various different sound bowls that I use that will work on the different chakras, so different notes will resonate with different parts of the body. And so some people like that, some people don't. But what I'd say to listeners is, if they are thinking about trying a sound bath, or they've been at a sound bath, generally the noise or the music that you don't like is the one that you need, because it's touching something within you that needs to
Oh,
come out. It's like, if you've ever heard, I've had the best yoga teachers tell me, the pose that you hate is the one that you need.
yeah.
So my encouragement to people is to kind of lean into that, use your breath, because it's touching something sensitive that needs some love from you, or some attention, or whatever it is.
Hmm. That's super interesting. I mean, I believe it. I like that a lot. Now, I think this is the one that people are probably least familiar with. So curious about the cacao ceremonies. What is that? Where does that come from? And like how do you facilitate that?
Yeah. And this is my new, well, not new, I've been kind of drinking ceremonial cacao for years, but it's one of the newer modalities I've been able to integrate into my work. For many years I've been doing Reiki, as I said, on the side, as well as my corporate life and sound baths. But cacao ceremonies are, and I suppose many people haven't heard of ceremonial cacao. They're kind of saying, oh, is that chocolate? It is pure chocolate, pure raw chocolate that comes from, Central and South America, right? So it's considered a sacred plant medicine from the Mayans and the Aztecs. So it's thousands of years old. And Mama Cacao is what, a lot of practitioners would refer to her as. But what is so special about cacao ceremonies is, and I love to integrate them with sound baths. I use them in wellness workshops. So, what's special about cacao, a ceremonial grade cacao, there, is that it is the pure type of cacao from the cacao pod and plant. So, a lot of what we see on the supermarket shelves are from big manufacturers is not pure cacao, right? It's not pure chocolate. It's not prepared or fermented in the same way. So I work with a particular brand here in Ireland where it's directly sourced from Peru and Guatemala. And so these are coming directly from sites where people are putting a lot of intention and in prayer and a lot of focus on how they prepare this. They see this as a medicine and they actually use it ritually themselves, right? So for thousands of years the Aztecs were using this ritually. There is a lot of incredible superfood components within pure cacao that gets lost in traditional chocolate making because of the various intensive creation phase. And so there's huge amounts of things like magnesium, calcium. What's so special about her is that there's a key component that physically opens the heart vessels. So it's a vasodilator. There's a bit of caffeine, but the main component is theobromide. And so and I will caveat, if anyone is breastfeeding or has any sort of like heart medication, they do need to consult a physician before considering doing this sort of practice. I drink cacao most days, so it's not like you have to come to a ceremony to do it. Similar to Reiki, when you do a training, you can do Reiki on yourself and your family, no problem. But when you're facilitating a group of people, you have to be certified because it's important that you're doing these things right. So with the ceremony, again, similar to coming to a sound bath, there is a group of people. A cacao ceremony is probably a little bit more intimate because we probably get to know each other a little bit more. Everyone has different styles. There's no one size fits all. I personally like to, as I said to you, blend it with different modalities. So I'll generally get people to say a few words of what brought them here, maybe share something that they're working on if they want to. We'll generally drink the cacao together. We'll make an intention together, and people will do their own private intention. So it's not something like you're just pouring and glugging back. You're doing it ceremonially, and so it takes about 20 or 30 minutes to kick in. And so when that heart opening sense kicks in into the individual, we're able to then feel that expansive opening in your heart chakra, really, and in your whole body. And so that's what she does, and it just enables deeper reflection. You then go into a meditation, and some people like to do movement because, again, like the Reiki, what I was mentioning to you, or like the sound healing, where there's maybe a noise that agitates you, it's important to shift the body. So, quite often people think relaxation is only about lying down or it's only about relaxing. It's also about shifting the energy out of your body. So it's like how people feel good after a workout or they feel good after certain breathing techniques. So if you've ever seen people do big, large sighs out of their mouth, it feels good. So cacao is a really good aid to help that kind of shifting of energy as well. So you can imagine you've got cacao, you've got some sound healing and meditation. And so blending all of these therapies together is really nice. So I couldn't recommend it enough, if I'm honest. A lot of people do an awful women's circle work or menstrual work with cacao. Why she's such a good aid for that is because of that ability to really connect to yourself, connect to your intuition. And I've actually been using cacao myself for my own womb work. Um, I just find it beneficial for that connection to myself, but also the nourishment of obviously the superfood components of it, but something energetically helps me just feel that bit more calm inside, even if it's chaotic. So in times of madness in my life, especially the last 5 years, moving home, starting a new job, really stressful job, living back in the family home, buying my first home, I would, daily go to cacao and just, help. It would just help me center myself. And then
Right.
drinking it, and even after about 20 or 30 minutes of drinking it, I just find calm in the storm. Even if
Yeah.
everything was chaotic around me, I
Right.
could control the calm inside me, and I would use these different things to help me.
So you mentioned something about a lot of people think, just laying down has to do with relaxation. And so I'm wondering, in your training or certification or through experience, I think a lot of us, will come home from work and we think just laying on the couch watching TV, scrolling, whatever, that's going to relax us. And I can tell you right now, I mean, I am tired, but I will do that sometimes. So it's like, am I actually relaxing though? So I'm just curious, what does relaxation actually mean? And I mean, are there more productive forms of relaxation versus not
Mm,
productive forms?
yeah, I totally get you. And I have to be careful how I say this because, look, I often quite like to relax by, and I try not to spend too much time on social media, but sometimes I
Mhm.
enjoy it because I'm reading funny memes
Yeah.
or, cosmology and astrology stuff, as
Hmm.
well as like cats, doing some funny stuff, right? So for me, relaxing might be okay, well, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes and like watch these funny memes. Now, when you've had a long, hard day at work, think about it, right? You have spent probably the guts of 8 to 10 hours on a screen, whether it's on a
Hmm.
laptop or whether it's on a phone. All
Right.
of that information is being computed through your eyes, brought into your brain, and your brain has to do lots of work to make sense of it. Okay. And so if you come home after, 8, 10 hours of the day doing that, and you've probably done it on a lot of like hard topics, you come home then to the screen at home, whether it's your phone or whether it's Netflix or whatever you're watching, you're doing the same thing. So for
Hmm.
you, that might be okay, I'm just going to relax and watch my favorite show. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
maybe the word that's better is you're not being restored.
Okay.
You've only got a certain amount of energy. Imagine yourself like your mobile phone battery. You have to charge it every day, right? More
Hmm.
during the day, your mental battery, your whole body, because you're whole connected, right? Your battery being drained. If you come home and maybe you might generate some battery from watching Netflix, but you're on slow charge. But if you want a fast charge, you need to do the things that require the less effort of your brain having to compute things. That's why mindful practices, whether that's a walk in nature, right, whether that's my friend likes to color, whether that is just
Hmm.
listening to very gentle guided meditation, you're trying to declutter your mind. Because
Mm.
remember, you've been using it all day, so you can't charge it back up if it's full of clutter.
Hmm.
So that's why I say it depends on what you want, because you're not going to charge your battery watching back to back 5 or 6 Netflix shows, and then you're not going to sleep till 11 o'clock, and then the cycle repeats. And this was
Right.
me, by the way. I was like, this isn't working. I'm not feeling regenerated. I'm not feeling restored. And there's
Totally.
all sorts of like, I'm big into biometrics. Again, I'm a big advocate of science as well, and I've lots of friends that are medical doctors. So don't think for 1 minute that I'm not an advocate for that. I'm very much of, everyone should have a broad toolkit. Uh,
Hmm.
but I started to do more of this like discovery physiologically. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I am not getting enough sleep. Why am I getting enough sleep? Okay, I'm spending too much time watching TV late after work. Is that really relaxing me? Could I cut that down a tiny bit? You've heard all the stuff about blue light from the phones. That's definitely a thing. It's not my area of
Hmm.
expertise, but I know if I'm up scrolling, I'm not
Yeah,
going to sleep. So I challenge people to think, are you relaxed or are you restored?
right. I love that differentiation. And it's funny that you're talking about the clutter in your brain because everybody calls it mindless scrolling, but it's not actually mindless. I mean, you're consuming tons of information, different types of information. We're laughing, we're crying, we're doing all these things. Like it's not mindless at all. So that is really helpful in understanding why we don't necessarily feel restored after, even if we're not expending physical energy, we are actually expending mental energy in consuming all of this information. So, yeah, really, that differentiation is super helpful in kind of recognizing what I need or what people need after a long workday or in tough times. So thank you for describing that. What success stories have you seen from people you've worked with?
For me, success is as simple as seeing the white of somebody's eyes light
Mm-hmm.
up. I had a client yesterday, and just seeing, them come from before to after and seeing improvements in just how they feel. Most
Mm-hmm.
people come to these sort of therapies, or, as you're saying, I do a lot of coaching as well. They're confused about something. And so seeing people gain clarity, gain just that sense of calm, that's success to me. Even if there's only one person in the class or in it that appreciates it. So, and for me, why that's important is because it's a ripple effect. I know that person then might meet five more people and will make an impact on their day because they're in a more calm center place, right? They're going to respond versus react. I'm very open to feedback always from people. I'm always iterating. I'm always learning. But what also is really nice is to see the same people come back. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because you do attract your tribe in a sense, right? We all have,
Sure.
and this is a recommendation for people that are curious about, holistic therapies. Try loads of different things, and you may not always gel with a therapist. It's kind of a bit like dating, it's
Yeah.
kind of like you have to meet people and you have to
Right.
have an exchange of energy, whether that's a conversation, whether that's a free trial. So it's success really is knowing that you're doing good, really, and you
Mm-hmm.
get that feedback from people, and that they what's actually very nice, this morning I got a text. I checked in on a client and they said they could actually sleep.
That's huge.
you know
What you said about to trial and error, we've talked about this so much on this podcast, whether it's with a physician, a physical therapist, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist. The reality is, especially when we're talking about energies, you're not going to vibe with everyone. So it is really important to just try. And then also, like you mentioned, holistic therapy is an umbrella term. So there are different types of holistic therapies. It is a bit of putting in the effort and trial and error.
and one thing that's really helped me with holistic therapies is, as I mentioned to you, that connection to myself. And what I mean
Yeah,
by that is, and I think maybe in some of your other episodes you talked about this, just this inner knowing that something isn't right. Or,
right,
when you get a response from a physician or somebody that doesn't seem right to you, like it
right.
doesn't sit with you, and trust that. So
Yeah.
these therapies help you connect to yourself, or you are your own best teacher, you're your own best healer. And so I actually had an instance about womb health where I went to women's health practitioner, right? Someone that was specializing in this. And in Ireland, it's not really common to have a lot of speciality like that
Hmm.
for this. Generally, going to your general practitioner is enough. So I've been working through a few issues myself. I haven't been formally diagnosed, but I definitely feel like I have some sort of cysts or some
Hmm.
level of endo. But I had an IUD inserted, and I just
Hmm.
knew after about 6 or 9 months, I was just really wasn't myself.
Right.
Uh, I had a lot of pain various times of the month, and I went back to this particular physician that had inserted it, and I got completely dismissed. I was
Yeah.
told, "Oh, you're just getting to a certain age. I'm now in my late 30s. You just kind of have to put up with it." That was
Mhm.
literally the words that I got, and it infuriated me. One, because I could tell this person was just dismissing me. Two,
Right.
I'd
Right.
spent a lot of money on this, and
Hmm.
I just knew that it wasn't correct. So I went back to my family doctor, who's a
Hmm.
male, and he's amazing. And
Hmm.
I went and got a scan, and the IUD was wrongly inserted, and it was
Hmm.
actually doing damage. And so all that to say to your listeners that if you do not feel like something is correct, or if
Yeah.
some expert is telling you something and it doesn't feel right, you're right. Go
Hmm.
find somebody else,
Yeah.
because you know your body best. All of that to say, that's how and it's only in recent years, Gabby, that I've really linked an awful lot of my stress and the way that I
Hmm.
was living my life to a lot of the challenges that I've had. I've always, maybe like most of your listeners, we kind of just put up with the pain. We kind of
Yeah.
just put up with, oh, this is normal. We just have to be debilitated for 7 to 14 days a month. We just kind of get on with it. And it's only in recent years where I've really gotten deeper into the work that I do and educated myself a bit more. Like, this is why I'm so delighted to be on a podcast like this, because there isn't many places that are speaking this truth about
Hmm.
that there is so much that women aren't being told, right? And that we're being
Right.
told that we have to that that you just have to kind of get on with it.
I think what you're saying is super powerful too. I mean, I think we always have an instinct, but the more that we feel connected with our body, the more we can trust ourselves. And then as a result, the more able we are to advocate for ourselves in these situations. It is super important to really not
Mm.
only know your body, I think to a certain extent we always know our body, but like really be connected with it and really just trust it, like trust your gut and learn to have that relationship with yourself. And I think that that's super important. On the other hand, we have spoken with people about, okay, so now I am diagnosed with endometriosis, or I have this chronic pain issue, something of that nature. I think there's an interesting dynamic with pain and diagnoses that is perhaps some people feel a little bit betrayed by their bodies.
Mm.
Um, and then you do have to get to this point of acceptance. So how can these holistic practices or some of them help you get to that place of acceptance? To a certain extent, we do have to move on with life. So how does that kind of help with that?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because and I'll always say these sort of things to my friends, and like, they'll always be like, I shouldn't have said it to you, because pain is actually very helpful.
Mm,
It's very helpful, whether it's psychological or physical pain. And why? Because it's pointing us towards something that we're not dealing with. And
interesting.
so now, take myself for example. I get a chronic pain every month through whatever this kind of cyst thing that I'm dealing with. And at 3 a.m. in the morning, when I wake up with this chronic pain, am I thankful for it then? I'm like, absolutely not. But it's
Right.
a reminder to me that whatever I'm doing isn't working. Right now, what
Mm,
am I doing? The way I'm living my life, what I'm putting into my body. Maybe I'm pushing myself too much. I actually personally found that stress was the biggest cause. And I can guarantee you, there's loads of research on this. It is a huge contributor to every disease and illness. And if I'm honest, I think stress, and we've all been there, high stressful situations where our period has been late, it's
hmm.
been significantly heavier. These things that we're dealing with, whether it's pain, whether it's, the way our menstrual cycle is, it's telling us something.
Yeah.
It's informing us that whatever we're doing or the way we're leading our life isn't working. Now, that isn't necessarily going to, land very easily with people that are listening to this. Like, what am I going to do? I have this incredible pain. I have to deal with this day in, day out. What I gently suggest to these people, is there one small thing that could help you, just alleviate the push in your life? Because all
Uh-huh.
we're doing is push, push, push. We have to do, and we have bills to pay, right? We have to work.
Right.
We have to, do our, go to the gym. We have to do all of this. But, is there anywhere that you could pull back a tiny bit?
Yeah.
Because the more you pull back, it's like a pendulum swing.
Mm.
And look, there's all sorts of causes, and you know this better than I, Gabby, and with your other experts. When there is any sort of female or womb challenges, it's not just one thing. So what your listeners and what people need to figure out is, where can they bring more balance into their life to try and alleviate some of this. So I know, for example, 2 weeks ago, I had a really, my period was completely late. I was way too stressed. I was doing way too much. I was pushing too much. I was pushing myself too far. Right.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I was like, okay, this is my body now speaking to me, because your body will react to how you treat it. Right. In this sense. Um, I had way too much sugary foods. I was, abroad and elsewhere. And I suffered the consequences of the pain. And so what I've been reminded of is, I need to nourish my body. I need to take more rest. As much as I facilitate sound baths, I probably need more myself. These monthly reminders
Yeah.
help me just pull back even 1%. If I could recommend anything, maybe I had two things. People are dealing
Hmm.
with, heavy periods or heavy menstrual times. There was never talk around, well, maybe you don't have to go to the gym that week. You
Yeah.
know, living in your cycle. There's a great um, lady who I recommend. I've read a lot of her stuff. She does a lot of work around menstrual work and fasting.
Okay.
Her name is Dr. Mindy Plez, Plez. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Her big thing is around women fasting for them, right? So it's not like how, a traditional human should fast, right? Because we have
Hmm.
4 different hormones that spike at different levels at the time of the month. So really what I've been trying to do is live more in line with my cycle. And so what
Yeah.
that means is, and we're not really taught this in school.
No, we're not taught any of this. I mean, there's so many things that I'm like, I wish I learned how to meditate when I was like 6, and I wish I learned how to stretch better. And I would, like all these things, these are really useful tips. And the living in your cycle is definitely one that's coming up more and more. And other people who've been on this podcast have mentioned that. So I'm super
Mhm.
interested in what you have to say about this.
The first day of your bleed. The days running up to that is when, we want to retreat, we, need more sleep, we crave more of that kind of sugar or that kind of carbohydrates to help us feel full. Is that the week you should be doing hit training and pushing yourself and going above and beyond? No, like
Right.
right, because your body's getting ready to actually go through a process. And so everyone's cycle is very different. I do think it's very unique, and I think it takes time to learn that. And
Hmm.
especially if you're on contraception or not, again, all of this, I recommend speaking to, an expert and doing your research. But then I'll notice from day 8 or 9 to 15, I am like a powerhouse. I can like run the world, right?
Mm.
And you notice when you have those spikes. And so when you're in these moments, you're really creative, you're tapping into yourself, you just get 100 times more things done. So I
Hmm.
know, okay, and I have a little app on my phone. I'm like, okay, this is my time, provided you're
Hmm.
not sick and there isn't other stuff going on. But then after that, it's like your womb is starting to build back up, where you're not so hungry. So the more that we can live in our cycle, and what I mean by that is, can you get the extra half an hour sleep from
Yeah.
day 16 onwards, right? Can you just go easy on yourself if you want that chocolate bar, even though you're, working on your fitness at day 24? Can you just skip doing a hit class and maybe do a nice walk in nature? I believe an awful lot of issues in humans, but in women in particular, when it comes to any sort of female issues, is the stress we put on our body and how we can just alleviate that stress. And I think one of the the easier ways of doing that is being in your cycle and helping yourself be through that.
Yeah.
You have this body, so you learn to live with it more gracefully. Now, look, I am very aware, and I have lots of friends actually, and I have a family member that have severe challenges with debilitating pain, and
Mm-hmm.
is that a place where you should be focusing on living with your body? No, like that sometimes things go so far you do need medical intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do need proper prescriptive care there, or procedure, or whatever that is. But my recommendation is, once you get that, can you start to just even day by day integrate some of these practices and help yourself live more in your flow? I know people use that word as a kind of cliche, but the flow is it's almost like a metaphor in this sense, because that's what your cycle is.
Yeah, super interesting. And again, it is all about balance, like you mentioned. Everything's give and take. I would love to start learning more about that and incorporating that more in my life. So I'll definitely check out some of the resources you mentioned. This is why I kind of started this and start the website too, because people have gone through this for centuries,
Mm-hmm.
and we just don't talk about it as much. I feel like the conversation's just kind of starting. It is super important for us to share these resources with each other so we can just learn how to better our lives overall. But
Absolutely. And it's fantastic what you're doing, you and your co-founder, and it's important that we have more of this. And there is more and more. I'm hearing more and more podcasts about it. That's how I found that Dr. Mindy Plez.
mhm,
I just what I'd say is, like, use discernment when you're going online, because there's lots of stuff obviously that, can be kind of scaremongering-esque. That's why it's great to have a community where we can
yeah,
meet and go, look, I've dealt with this similarly. Here's some of the things that I've done. And,
yeah,
again, there's no one size fits all.
right.
Everyone is different, but we all have a cycle, and we all have the power to live within our cycle and be
Hmm.
kinder to ourselves, and not put ourselves up to the expectations of, a world that, if I'm honest, has been built for, a single hormone human being.
Hmm.
Like, we have four different hormones that
Yeah,
impact us at different, and also impacts us at different stages in our life, by the way. you
yeah,
know um and that's perimenopause, is definitely something that's I'm getting online, because I'm becoming of a
hmm,
certain age, and I'm like, what is this? I just thought it was menopause. I never realized there was something
yeah,
in between. I have friends that are really, they're kind of they kind of see it as a really negative thing. And for me, it is a privilege to grow old. Like,
yeah,
and there's a reason why, the female body continues to evolve. Like, how amazing is it?
right,
We
right.
create, and then we go through a whole process of perimenopause and menopause. Like, that has a function, you know?
Hmm. I'm curious, actually, now that we're talking about holistic therapy, we actually talked to a perinatal psychiatrist on an episode a while ago.
Mhm,
And she was talking about the impact of stress on trying to conceive. And, she was talking about being well mentally
mhm.
is important in conceiving. And have you ever had clients that are coming to you kind of looking to find this mental balance because they are wanting to conceive, or is that something that's common?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends, and I have had clients because of my age, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
in my late 30s. So, I think the female body is so powerful. It can conceive and hold babies well in to later in your 40s. But what I see is, you know what it is, Gabby? It's stress, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by stress is, like, we talked about it earlier about the mind clutter. So you're spending all your day in work, filling your mind with work that you have to do, and you're filling it up. But you're also probably worrying about trying to conceive. So it's causing more of this mental noise where you're worrying about, will this work? Am I good enough? Will everything be okay? So if you're filling your mind with this all day, and then you come
Hmm.
home and it's still there, right? And you're not doing anything to get rid of that mental clutter, to clear it out,
Yeah.
right? What happens is it gets stuck there, right? That energy, because thoughts, right? We have about 80,000 thoughts a day. 80% of these thoughts are on repeat, and they're probably negative. And I can
Yeah.
guarantee you most of them aren't true. There is a person that I have read an awful lot about. His name is Joe Dispenza. He has, hit and miss reviews, but I like an awful lot of how he talks about how your thoughts program your emotions, which program your reality. So what I mean by
Yeah.
that is if you're spending all day worrying about this cycle isn't going to work, it's not going to work. What happens if it doesn't work, right? And so you're saying this on repeat, right? Your brain actually thinks what you're saying is accurate, is true, right? And so it's
Hmm.
producing cortisol, it's producing all of those stress hormones, chemicals in your body. And that's you're releasing that. Like we are the only
Right.
mammal on this planet that can create a fear response with our mind. If you and I had an argument here, I'm not so sure we get back to, our bubbly, personable conversation because we
Hmm.
hold that inner. Where holistic therapies come into play is they are a natural way to quieten that mind,
Hmm.
declutter the thoughts. Then you're not having those thoughts, so you're not putting as much stress hormone response into your body. Your
Hmm.
body's able to function, you know
Yeah.
and so that I honest so when back to like people that come to me that are conceiving, again, it's not just one reason why you're not conceiving, right? That's why there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right?
Yeah.
Because it's multifaceted. However, I do feel intuitively that a big part of it is how women have to live in this very, you know need push environment. We've all heard of the stories, and I have a friend actually who was trying to get pregnant
Hmm.
and just stopped worrying about it and then got pregnant, and then it happened to her again 2 years
Yeah.
later, right? She'll know when she listens to this because she was like, she'll just laugh. And so, what was the difference? Now, again, I'm not just saying she relaxed and it happened. I can't say that for sure,
Right.
but I do believe that the female body needs to be relaxed.
Yeah.
Well, mind, body, and soul, the whole thing.
It's funny in this conversation because I'm thinking of those social media videos of people who are like, I'm successful. This is what I do every morning. And it's like, wakes up at 5 a.m., dunks their head in the cold water, whatever. And it's like, okay, but it's not actually about that. It's about like the routine and the practice and having that. And I think that's a little bit what you're getting to as well as where we've been talking about how life is a balance. Like you don't have to dunk your head in the cold water and wake up at 5 a.m., but it's like
Yeah.
just having a routine and a practice and prioritizing your mind just like you prioritize the physical. And then again, kind of living in that balance.
Like one more thing I'll just say, because I'm so passionate about this,
Hmm.
is we as well. Like you'll see a lot of this online. It's like, well, I do this every day, and whatever it is.
Hmm.
If you don't do it every day for whatever reason, don't beat yourself up about
Yeah.
it. The more, and this is, if you can get closer to yourself, your real self, your inner knowing, you'll
Hmm.
know what you need and when.
Hmm.
Doing holistic practices or therapies, either ad hoc or regularly, reminds you
Yeah.
that you already know that. But right now, it's really hard to hear that because your mind is so full of noise. Like all of our minds are full of noise. You have to find balance, and don't just do one thing.
Hmm.
Do a little bit of a lot, see what works from you. I've
True. I definitely just started that journey of like diversifying my exercise because I was very much like cardio and sports and like that's it. And then my body was literally begging me for yoga and Pilates and that sort of thing. I would have never known that I needed that if I didn't feel the pain in my body, literally begging for it. So I do think that that's really interesting what you're saying. And I think that's why it's called holistic therapies too, because it's like very holistic.
Mhm.
And now you're connecting with your body to understand what you need more of. And I think that's super powerful. What is, in your opinion, the outlook of holistic therapy and how do you see it sort of evolving?
I just see the demand for this more and more.
Mm.
Even before I left my corporate life, I just found more and more people proactively seeking some sort of help. Like, just the world is gone mad, right? We can all obviously agree on that, right? All corners of the world. And so anything holistically, because people are looking for alternatives, right? And I'm personally seeing now an awful lot more females that will come to a lot of the workshops or practices that I would do, but I'm seeing more and more males coming now. And
Oh,
so which I love, and it's like I think these therapies are for everyone, by the way.
yes.
So anecdotally, I'm seeing a trend where I'm seeing more and more people that wouldn't have ever have come to these sort of things come, right, and try it out
Hmm.
because they're so full of stress, noise, desperation. The stuff that they've been using isn't working. If I'm honest, with the age that we're in with AI and things going more and more online and not being able to know what's real or not, we're
Yeah.
seeing people crave more in person support, right? So
Hmm.
it's a huge community. I think there's a whole other space of wellness that is definitely coming to the forefront with various trials and so on. So if anything, I hope that more people find this because
Hmm.
it is really a truly a self-healing experience that you can give to yourself.
Definitely. On that note, say I'm starting from zero, I've never meditated, never done yoga, like nothing. Where do you suggest that I start to do holistic therapy?
If you want to kind of get into this quick and very accessible, I recommend if there is a yoga studio or a wellness studio in your vicinity, try them out. Go and
Yeah.
do I think the new deals or, new joiner deals. That's what I did. I started
Yeah.
off with a Groupon deal, and just get curious, go and try different classes. Even if you don't like one, you'll know you don't like that and do a different
Yeah.
one. So just make sure people are qualified and they actually are certified. What I've always benefit from is a recommendation. Hence
Mm.
why I'm recommended that if you physically can go into a studio, you could speak to the studio owner
Yeah.
who is in the wellness world. Follow your curiosity is what I'd say. I
Hmm.
don't want to be too prescriptive
Yeah.
because it is trial and error and what you like.
Hmm. Definitely. Well, that's super helpful advice. And Aoife, thank you so much for being here today and all of the important work that you're doing. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Gabby. What a joy! And I would talk about this for the next 6 hours. So, very very happy to do so anytime you want me to. And if any listeners are looking for any details, please welcome them to reach out
Hmm.
to me. I'd love to support where I can. I'm really passionate about people empowering themselves.
Hmm.
So
Definitely. I will link your website and email for everybody to reach out if they're interested.
great. Thank you, Gabby. Thank
Mhm.
you, everyone, for listening. We'll look forward to your feedback.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Unison Community Podcast. As a reminder, the information shared in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. This content is not a substitute for professional or medical diagnosis, treatment, or advice. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions that you may have regarding your health or medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast or read on the website. Thank you again for being a part of our community, and we hope to hear from you soon.